All right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for our public workshop. It's October 21st. We're doing this via Zoom. The intent of this meeting was to first engage the actual residents that are going to be directly impacted by the Bessie Basin projects. The reason that we wanted to do this was to make sure that we gave you enough time to ask any questions that you have, give you as much time to answer those questions or ask those questions, and give you whatever answers that you need. To make sure that, when you see, plans or future designs, you know exactly what we're talking about. And as we've discussed before, if we were to open this up to the entire town, which, we were going to, you have a lot of other people that may have different questions that aren't really relative to actually your project, but maybe some apprehension or some discussion that goes into their project. But we wanted to make sure that we were laser focused on this project and, some of the impacts that you're going to see, within the right of way in front of your home. And we completely understand that when you see the grass area in front of your house, you take that as upon, it's your property, you maintain it, you put landscaping in it, so on and so forth. But the way that we're going to do this program tonight, like a town council meeting, unlike a town council meeting, you guys have as much time as you want to ask any questions. We're not going to give you a 3-minute time limit. The chat box is open, so I'm not going to disable chat. You guys can keep your videos on, you can take your videos off, but this is an open discussion opportunity for all of us to get together to talk about some of your concerns and answer a lot of your questions relative to this specific project. And then I'm just going to go through a quick presentation of some of the questions that have been asked about, again, Butler and 7th, you've all probably heard about. We typically hear the same questions for this project. And hopefully that'll alleviate some of those questions. And then I'll move into Hal's discussion. He'll go through the actual design or the concept design right now. And that's really important to reiterate, is that we're in the concept phase right now. We actually haven't signed the contract with FEMA yet. The concept is just stage 1. So with the contract with FEMA is they pay for the design, which is phase 1 of the contract. The cost of that they're going to reimburse us is $80,000. For the construction cost, that's phase 2, that's $1.1 million. So we're looking at close to $1.2 million of a grant. Now, currently the town has been awarded 3 grants. We have West 2nd Avenue, which is a $1 million grant. We have Butler and 6th, which is a $770,000 grant, and then this one. So when we talk about if people start trying to commingle all of these, each one is its own separate project. So if one drops off, then that doesn't mean that we can't proceed with the other 2. But I'm just going to quickly go over. I'm sorry if it's repetition for some of you that went to the dirt roads discussion or the presentation that we did, but I think it's very important that we whip through those because some of you didn't have or actually weren't on those. So pretty much what I call this is fact and fiction. This isn't the intent of what we're talking about tonight. Because again, this was just the overall dirt roads discussion. People had petitions, people had a lot of questions. Everybody thought that we were widening everybody's dirt roads in the town of Windermere, which is not true. It's only for the roadways that we're looking at possibly getting grant funding. So again, the first thing that, you can tell your friends, neighbors, coworkers, whatever it is that the town is not looking to widen all the dirt roads in Windermere. The only reason that these 3 projects that I discussed, West 2nd Avenue, Butler Basin, Butler and 6th, and the Bessie Basin project, the reason that we are looking at the possibility of 18-foot actual dirt roadways is because we have to meet certain guidelines for that. And we'll get into those guidelines, but as you'll see in the videos and some of the concepts that we have, and when we actually meet on site, the 18 feet of right-of-way either matches or is close to what's already existing out there. So yes, are we considering widening some roadways? Yes, but again, it all depends. Like with Butler and 7th, when we looked at that project, especially on 7th Avenue, people are like, oh, you're widening the dirt roadway and it's just going to be a huge thoroughfare. Well, it's not. We're actually within 1 or 2 feet on 7th. And when you look at Butler, we actually reduced the width of the right-of-way or the roadway by about 2 feet. So what it really came down to was the grass swale area. So when they looked at it, they were like, okay, we have 14 feet of swale, you have 6 feet for your water utilities, then 18 feet of roadway, and then 3 foot of shoulder, just a viewpoint of 44 feet, gave them apprehension that people will see that as just a huge, like a freeway. But as you can see with that project and with this project, we try to meander it a little bit for several reasons: to protect vegetation, to slow down traffic, and to, again, to protect trees and environmentally sensitive areas. So these are the only 3 projects that we're looking at. And again, for the widening of West 2nd Avenue, I believe we're widening it by 4 feet. And that 4 feet is 2 feet of curb on each side. So it's not like we're widening roadways, to meet, huge standards or anything like that. It's just making sure that we're meeting the minimum standards so we don't lose this money. All right. And sorry for some pauses too, guys, because I'm both the administrator of this Zoom call and I'm doing the PowerPoint presentation until I transfer it over to Hal. And I should have gone over this before, but the chat box again is open. So if during the meeting you have a question, please feel free to put the question in there just so you don't forget. We'll make sure that we get back to all the questions. In addition to that, the decorum that we typically see is what we don't want is neighbor versus neighbor talking to each other. So all questions or all comments, please direct them to myself or my staff. The more that we get into the weeds as far as, neighbor versus neighbor, that's really not going to be productive. There's going to be differences of opinions. Sometimes we're going to have to respectfully disagree. But as long as we're disagreeing on facts, that's really what, all we can ask for. So hopefully, again, we want to make sure we meet the decorum as well. In addition to that, I don't want to make you guys feel bad, but, my kids are in the other room right over there. So please make sure that we use appropriate language as well. Not only for that reason, but we're also going to be posting this on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't already gone to YouTube, make sure you do. We have a YouTube channel now, and the first video for this project was posted today. I actually taped it yesterday, but it was actually posted today. And then we'll be posting more as the week goes by. So after, we talked about, are we widening roads? Which roads are we widening? People, were asking, well, what are these Green Book standards and why do we have to adhere to them? Do we have to adhere to them? Well, the Green Book standards is pretty much the federal standards, state standards, and pretty much the general engineering guidelines that are used by engineers when they are designing roadways, designing, not only paved roadways, but dirt roadways. And it comes up with minimum widths. The minimum width for a travel lane is 9 feet. So the total feet for both sides would be 18 feet. Now, if you were to make this a one-way roadway, then we would be utilizing 9 feet, but that hasn't been approved by town council. I don't think it's even been discussed by town council for the one-waying of this roadway or some of these roadways. But again, right now, since it's a two-lane roadway or two-way roadway, you're looking at a total of 18 feet. Now, if this was not funded by a grant, because in the actual grant contract that you sign, it says that you're going to meet these various standards. Because again, just like if you're going to receive money to build a home or anything else, they're going to want to make sure that you build it up to the Florida building code or whatever codes and standards are there, because they're well-established codes. They don't want to give money away to people and then them not meet standards and then have to come back and actually give them more money or try to make them or force them to make these remediations to make sure that they meet those standards, so they make sure that they work. But again, if you live on, First Ave, if you lived on Forest, if you live on Oakdale, if we are not funding these through grants, we do not have to meet the minimum Green Book standards. There's pros and cons to both of this. Again, you don't get the grant funds. Also, the minimum width for a emergency vehicle to that can travel would be about 15 feet. Now, our land development code actually says the minimum width of a travel lane or a roadway should be 9 feet and 18 feet. But we can deviate from that because we're protected under sovereign immunity. And we'll get into exactly what sovereign immunity is. But again, unless we're seeking federal funds or any other grants, we would probably have to adhere to those design standards. If we don't agree to grants, then who pays for it? You do. Currently, we receive about 220 from the tax assessments that you get on your stormwater bills. And from the stormwater for actual projects, it ranges between $130,000 and $150,000. So just imagine how much time it would take for us to save up to fund some of these projects, like Butler and 7th or the entire basin for Bessie, if we weren't able to go ahead and leverage getting these grants. In addition to that, when we apply for these grants, and what these grants are is Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, or HMGP, or Local Mitigation Strategy Funds. So several years ago, and a lot of different municipalities or other jurisdictions really didn't apply for these grants. And the basis of that is you only get money if a disaster occurs. So they're trying to seek all these other monies, whether it be through Amendment 1 or some other source that's out there. And we had the foresight to go ahead and say, what, listen, we're prone to hurricanes. We've been through 04, we've been through other ones. If something else happens, we want to make sure that we're on that list and that we're high on that priority list. So we started working on that, saying that, hey, listen, here's some of these basins that we have. And what a basin is pretty much the bottom of the bathtub that we want to make sure that we take care of, so people can either, get away, can leave their homes, or emergency vehicles can get to their homes in case there is a natural disaster. So we work with the Orange County Emergency Management people and their LMS program, and we're able to get a lot of our high ticket projects on that list. And that's pretty much why West 2nd Avenue was leapfrogged by the Willows last year, because we were in line to get this money. So instead of us paying $1 million for a project, we're only paying $250,000. And again, these two projects would have to wait a while for us to fund or self-fund based on the existing assessment that we would have right now. Now, if we wanted to accelerate these projects, then we would have to either take a look at an increase in your assessments, which is pretty much a tax increase, which I don't think anybody wants. Because again, once you do that, then other people are going to start asking questions. Well, why didn't you receive the grant money, or why aren't you seeking grant money? And as you can tell, our overall budget for the town of Windermere is $6 million. And right now we have about $3 million in grant funds that we're able to leverage to help offset some of those costs. So if we don't design to these Green Book standards, will we lose if somebody files a lawsuit? That is a true and false answer. We can deviate as much as we want from those standards. Number one, we're going to have to find an engineer that's going to be willing to design to those standards. And if they do design to those standards, they're probably going to want some sort of harmless or indemnification that says that, hey, listen, we understand that you want to completely deviate from these, well-established design guidelines in order to, make sure that you're keeping the road width the exact same, protecting trees, so on and so forth. But their stamp of approval is on that, meaning that if I get sued, I can join them in the lawsuit. So they're going to want that hold harmless or indemnification in that. So I can't go back at them and say, well, listen, you guys designed it, so I can sue you guys. But it's pretty much going to be on us. But through sovereign immunity, which means that the king can do no wrong, we can design it any which way we want to do it, and pretty much not get sued. Or if we do get sued, they need permission to sue, and there's caps on how much they would be able to recover. But with stormwater, it's completely different. With stormwater, they could file an inverse condemnation, they could file a trespass, they can file a nuisance claim. Those pretty much throw sovereign immunity out the window. So we need to be very careful what we do. Now, a great example of this, and I don't want to give a roadmap of how you guys can sue me, because we're trying to make sure that we remediate these problems ahead of time, is that let's say that we just haphazardly, and a great example is what happened on West 2nd Avenue. We had one property owner that was on West 2nd Avenue had an issue. His property was flooding. Talked to Public Works, said, hey, let's go ahead. Can you guys go ahead and put in an asphalt berm? They did so. And when they did that, it pretty much just pushed the stormwater further down the roadway and into somebody's front yard and driveway. So then that person filed a lawsuit because, again, that became inverse condemnation to where we were utilizing their property for our stormwater system. So in those cases, it's not really the damages unless you completely flood out a property or a home. It mostly comes into attorney's fees. I'm an attorney, so, I have to, shave off the devil horns and hide my pitchfork. But, the exposure for that one project, the settlement was over $360,000. The town had to fix the problem anyway through engineered design. And our insurance company absorbed, I think, between $600,000 and $700,000 worth of legal fees. So, from our standpoint, again, we wanted to be more proactive, than reactive to a lot of these situations to make sure that we're correcting them and correcting them in the right manner. So if we do get sued in the future, sorry, Hal, if it's built to standards and he signs and seals these plans that says, listen, if you guys maintain this exactly the way that you intend on doing so, then I can actually go after him for maybe a faulty design or something else like that. So what is a typical section? And as you'll see in the videos and as you'll see in Hal's presentation, the minimum standards that we're going to be using, and these are all maximums. Well, they're maximums and minimums. So you're going to have when town council decided not to go with paving roadways, and that was a whole nother controversy that came up probably about 6 months ago. And the reason for that is that no engineer is going to come in and say, listen, in order to solve your problems, you need to maintain your dirt roadways. They're going to say, listen, you need to do some sort of paving or some type of semi-pervious paving to make sure that you can get the stormwater to the locations that you need before it gets into the lakes. But town council gave us the direction, hey, we want to make sure that we protect the charm. Everybody likes the dirt roads. So come up with a concept plan to where we can maintain our dirt roadways. So you can kind of see how difficult that is for staff and also for the engineers, is that a lot of people like the dirt roadways, a lot of people want utilities, and a lot of people want us to retain the stormwater in a safe and appropriate manner to protect our lakes, but they don't want to see any change. They don't want to see any change whatsoever. They don't want to see anything widened a little bit, and that's just hard to do. Typically with a standard, you can see this in other locations, in and around the area. For a dirt roadway, you typically have a crown dirt roadway, meaning that it's elevated, and then you have swales on either side. So you push the stormwater to either side, then it conveys it down to retention areas before it gets into the groundwater. Now, in order for us to reduce that footprint of having swales on either side, what we came up with was this standard, which is a 3-foot shoulder, which is the Green Book minimum to have as a shoulder on the side of a road. Now that 3 foot is going to be a flat grass. So it looks like a lawn going straight, it's just grass. And then you have a 2% slope dirt roadway. So the dirt roadway is going to be sloped a little bit at a 2%. It's not going to be like completely like this, but it's going to be sloped enough to where once the stormwater hits it, it's going to be able to go ahead and traverse the 6-foot flat shoulder slash water utility pathway. Now, people say, why are you using 6 feet? That's Orange County Utilities minimum for us to put in a water line. If you guys didn't know this, we're getting water to everybody that's along this project route. Not only are we getting you potable water, but we're also going to be making sure that we're giving you adequate fire flow protection, meaning that we're going to loop this system to make sure that, again, we have a fire hydrant every 500 feet. And then if there's a fire or anything like that, then there's going to be adequate flows to make sure that you guys are protected. So you have the 3-foot grass shoulder, you have the 18 feet dirt roadway, you have the 6 feet of grass, and then you have the maximum, I'm going to repeat, maximum of 14-foot swale. And that swale is 14 feet is because you want to maintain a certain slope. So number one, it doesn't look like a ditch. It's more aesthetically pleasing. Number two, you don't, it's easy to maintain. So when mowers are going down, they're not, slipping to the side or anything like that. So when you come down, it's pretty much going to come down about what, about like 6 to 8 feet, Hal? On the 4 to 1, I think I have on here. Yeah, 8 feet. So the 1 to 4 is 8 feet. Then at the bottom is going to be 3.5 feet lengthwise. And then when you come back up, it's going to be 4.5 feet. So it's going to be a gradual slope up and down. The max depth of that is going to be 1.5 feet. So it's not like a trench where it's 1.5 feet down. It's going to be a gradual 1.5 feet. Other systems that, options that, people have discussed and has come up at town council meetings. Well, what if we put in a piping system like we have like on 8th, or if we have on, First and Forest? Well, in First and Forest, some of that piping system, has created some controversies and also some headaches for those people that live along that roadway, because again, with dirt roadways, the dirt has to go somewhere. And guess where the dirt's going? It's going into those pipes. And that's a French drain system. So, everybody knows what a French drain system is. A pipe that has holes in the bottom so the water can percolate through. But guess what? When sand gets in there, it covers those holes, so it's not able to actually perk through. And so over time, that dirt just keeps gradually getting up. So the amount of water that can actually flow through that lessens and lessens and lessens. So it actually starts backing up, and that's where the flooding starts occurring. So yes, it's possible we can do that. Will the cost be increased? Yes, for this project. And will perpetual maintenance costs be increased because of that? Yes, it will, because we're going to have to suck out those structures to make sure that the sand is, removed. And it's not like we can put that sand right back onto the roadway. We have to take it over to another facility because of the gas, the oils that are actually part of that dirt that's in there. And then people talk about, well, I've been to Tallahassee, I've been to this other location. Why don't we just do straight ditches? Again, if you want to meet standards, you're going to have to, the further that you go down, the further you have to go out to make sure that you're meeting those slopes. So that's why we're looking at the minimum width or the maximum width of 14. Now, when you get to the very beginning of a basin area, again, you could reduce that width because the amount of flow that's coming through there is going to be less than when you're at the bottom of the hill. So you're probably going to see from the design aspect, when we get to design, it should be probably less than that. But again, the maximum, we want to give you the maximum today, because if I were to come back 2 months from now and say, oh, by the way, instead of 14 feet, I'm sorry, it's 19 feet, you'll be coming knocking on my door. So we want to tell you right now, the maximum of that swale system is going to be 14 feet. And so what does that 14-foot swale look like? Please don't take this as like, okay, we're putting in sidewalks or paved roadways or anything like that. The closest area that I was able to find that you can go to and actually touch, feel, smell, walk is pretty much across from Bailey Park on Windermere Road, right south of the dentist office that's there. And you can see, this is 14 feet, and this is pretty much what it would look like. So you can tell it's pretty much like a front yard with a little divot in it. So it's not like this monstrous, huge, and you'll see, like some of the new houses that were built just recently with their swale systems, they're very aggressive. They're bermed up. They're very, high up. This is going to be nothing like that. Again, this is what the typical swale would look like. That's 14 feet. So can staff do this without town council approval? Absolutely not. People are like, oh, whenever these I can guarantee this is like with every project. Well, Robert's just trying to ram this thing through. I haven't heard about this. I haven't been engaged about this. We've completely transformed our public outreach to, now we're actually just pretty much knocking on your all's doors and telling you, hey, we're having these meetings so we can get your input prior to us moving forward in the projects because we want to hear from you. So that's why you're getting the door knockers. Another one that we're doing really, really early is the new pedestrian bridge that we're looking at building over the canal on Lake Butler Boulevard. Pretty much on Friday, we're going to be handing out those for a meeting that we're probably going to have in the second week in November. So we want to make sure we get plenty of time to get those that are directly impacted saved first, and then we reach out to everybody in the general area and answer their questions as well. This was just a video. This is like Butler and 7th. This is actually Butler. This is just a normal, heavy rainfall that we get. I think we've had about 3 in the summertime. So you can see right now in this video, what's being used to convey the water is the roadway. And that's not what we want. We want to make sure that that dirt roadway is not the canal that's used for the conveyance of the water. We want to make sure that it's going into swale systems that convey that water, because when you convey that water in the swale systems and you hit those different culverts or the aprons or the driveways, it's able to slow down and perk before it gets all the way down. Because as you can see in the sheet flow from this, it's pretty much going straight down, and there's a pipe that's over here, and it's overflowing that pipe or that structure. And then when it's overflowing that structure, it's heading down the hill into Fernwood Park. So that's why we want to get into those swales. We want to slow it down and then eventually get it into those retention areas, so those retention areas aren't overflowing and then spilling directly into the lakes. So with that said, does anybody have any questions on what I presented as far as just a general overview of, why we are looking at using minimal standards for these projects? And then, I can answer those right now, or I can answer them after Hal's presentation. Just so you guys know, please, if you have, just like we have on West 2nd Avenue, John and I have pretty much met with everybody that lives on West 2nd Avenue. And we've met with a majority of the people that, or a lot of the people that live, Butler 7th, and I've seen, Bill out there. I've seen a couple of his neighbors out there as well, Bardot, when we've been out there the last couple of days. So we're going to be very visible out there to make sure we answer all of your questions, mark up exactly where you can see on your property, because it's hard on the concept level, because again, it's an aerial. And there's some tree canopy that's overgoing it. So you may see it and be like, oh my gosh, you're taking, what's perceived to be the majority of my property. It might not be the case when we get out there, or if we get out there and we see that we can actually meander it a little bit more, that's a possibility, because right now we're at concept, we're not at design. So we're trying to do what we can to make sure that we're taking all of your considerations, all your input prior to it getting into the actual final design. So again, I'll be out there tomorrow. So if you see me, feel free to reach out to me, or I think everybody has my phone number, my email. If not, just go to the town website, or just get I'll type it into the chat box. Not a dumb question. There's no dumb questions. We will go over the exact roadways that are going to be impacted by this. The only video that's out there on our YouTube channel right now is from Main Street all the way down to Bessie. And, as you'll see in the video too, our intent, and we heard from Bill, we heard from everybody that lives in that corner. And, I'm not saying this to be facetious or anything like that, is, you typically don't have, a dentist design your house. You get somebody, a professional, to actually design your house. Like Bill wouldn't want me actually repairing his motorcycle because I've never repaired a motorcycle, but I've seen Sons of Anarchy that does make me an expert. But the fact of the matter is that you guys have actually lived, breathed, and seen how this waste or the stormwater has flown down these areas. So not only are we looking at a final solution, but we're also looking at a stopgap as well, because we're probably going to be submitting designs, I would say probably in December, January to FEMA, because they actually have to approve the design first. And then we would then move into construction. So probably construction would start probably in summer of 2021, if not maybe the fall of 2021. So, there's 2 rainy seasons pretty much in between that time and now. So we're going to be working with other engineers to make sure that we try to alleviate what's out there now and maintain what's out there now. Another comment that I always hear too is, well, we haven't been maintaining what we currently have. I agree. The problem that and the hurdle that we've always had is that if you go to every single roadway and you go to different intersections and so on and so forth, we've been very consistent on being inconsistent on how we design roadways and how we maintain roadways. So with these kind of standards that we're putting in place now, we can kind of manipulate those in certain ways to where we pretty much have a standard that we can teach our public works employees of how to maintain these. If you have, the 3-foot shoulders, the 18-foot, the 2% slope, they'll know to maintain that 2% slope, the 6-foot, and also the swale system as well. Is it one size fits all? No, but we are going to try to get there. And with this design, they're going to come up with a maintenance program that our team are going to have to follow to make sure that we're not back here in 5 years. We understand, that roadways changed from the 1970s, 80s, 90s. We've had Elmer, Craig, we've had all these guys that have taken care of it, done different things. But our, opportunity right now is to try to make sure that we, create a stormwater system that's going to be easily maintained and take care of the stormwater. In addition to that, as I said before, we're looking at stopgaps. Meaning that, I talked to Bill the other day, he has an issue with the hump that's over there. We're going to take a look at that hump and see if there's anything that we can do to maybe shave that hump or to do something with the roadway to where we're not impacting the neighbors any more than they already are, but trying to make sure that we're not having those huge washouts where we had probably about 2 weeks ago. Is that an anomaly? Yes, it is, but we don't want to see that continuously happen because, that's a public safety, health, and welfare issue. What are the major milestones? You can see now, design complete, funding, bid, construction completed. If you don't have the forecast now, will you have enough to update us? Absolutely. Right now, we've asked, for this project, we're still waiting on the contract. And the reason that we're waiting for the contract is first of all, when we submitted for this to FEMA, they denied us. And the reason they denied us is because it wasn't really seen as a capital improvement. It was mostly seen as a repair and maintenance kind of project. We appealed that. And by appealing that, again, we were awarded the $1.1 million. So as we always say, we try to never take no for an answer, and that's exactly what we did. So we're still waiting on them to finalize the contract and send it to me to actually execute. But for all intents and purposes, like for West 2nd Avenue and for Butler and 7th, the designs are due by December. And that's their phase 1 of completion, then you move into construction. So let's say that we get the design completed by December 31st for, let's say, Butler and 7th, even though you guys are going to be like 2 months behind. So the thing is to do the design, or for this project, not to be confusing. So right now we're in concept. So if the town council and, you guys are okay with the concept as just, again, from 30,000 feet up, we're looking at the forest, not the trees just yet, then we'll move into the design. So the design would probably be about 2 to 3 months. And then after we're done with the design, then we'll take the design back to you guys for review, for discussion, and take it to town council. So that probably takes us into February, March. And then if everybody's happy with it, then March, we would get the blessing from town council. Then for us to actually do a bid, it would take 30 days for us to advertise that. And then it would probably take another probably 15 to 20 days to do a bid award. So that's March, April, May, which lines up perfectly for the summertime because again, we have less traffic in the summertime. So we're still shooting for summer 2021, but right now, since we're going to incorporate Orange County utilities, you're probably looking at fall of 2021 for this project. We have asked for extensions on West 2nd Avenue and on Butler and 6th because again, we are incorporating the potable water system. So hopefully that answers that question. All right, I'm gonna ask you to hold on to your questions right now. No, it's not going to be concurrent with 7th and Butler because again, we haven't signed the contract yet. If we can get it concurrent with Butler and 7th, that would be great because if we can bid these projects as one project, it's less money as far as, not MOT, but for them to bring all of the equipment over because that's a cost. So if we can get one contractor to do both projects, then we would probably see a significant savings. So we're going to try to do that as concurrent with Butler and 7th, but again, we don't want to lose out on any grant funding and we don't want to miss out on a deliverable. Yes, so we're incorporating the water to do concurrently with this project. So with this project, we want to make sure that if we're going to dig up everything or dig up an area and disrupt your lives for a little bit, we want to make sure we're doing it once, not coming back twice. A comment was made, at a town council meeting is like, okay, well, if you're having the foresight to put in water, why aren't you doing sewer? Well, if we were to do sewer, in order to meet again the distance standards, we would probably have to widen probably the other side from 3 feet to 6 feet. But right now for wastewater, you're looking between, I think, at least $20 and $30 million for us to try to fund that. And right now, I know the feds don't have the money. I know we don't have the money. So that's a huge project that, we really don't see that we can fund right now. As far as you guys that have Lake Apopka natural gas, if they're interested in running that line down your roadway, then they'd be able to go ahead and put that because there's minimal design standards when it comes to separation between a water line and a gas line. What gets really tricky is when you get into reuse and wastewater lines. Yeah, when I talk about potable water, what we'll do is we'll sub it out to your property line. So when you're ready, if your well system fails, okay, the only time that you're going to be required to hook up to the water system for the town of Windermere is if your well system fails. The Department of Health will not give you a permit to redig a well if potable water systems are available to you. So that's when you're going to be required to hook up to the town or to Orange County utilities. But the sub out will be there to the right-of-way line, and then they'll set the meter, and then you have to just get with your plumber to sub it to your house and separate the well, and then you can still use your well for irrigation purposes. You do not want to use potable water, I can guarantee you that, for irrigation purposes. Yes, Kimley Horn is presenting something, and I'm trying to kick it off to them right now. But if there's nothing further, just please hold your questions to the end or go ahead and put it in the chat box and then we'll address them after. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and allow Hal to share the screen and get into the actual concept. Oh, before you start, Hal, burying power lines, that is way too expensive. And it's more for aesthetics than anything else. Like for West 2nd Avenue, they're asking us to inquire about burying the electrical lines. for West Second Avenue only, it's the rule of thumb is $1 million a mile. And, right now, I don't think the entire town would want us to be spending it just for West Second Avenue or just for your area or for some of these projects because of the fact that it is so expensive. And also, your power, by having underground, your power outages are going to be fewer, but they're going to be longer. And the reason for that is because they're going to have to trace the line because it's underground to figure out where the break is. When a break is above ground, they can see it and they can fix it. So, if a branch falls and hits it, yes, you're going to lose your power, but they can come out there and fix it within 2 to 3 hours. But if it's underground, then they're going to have to send people out here. They're going to have to do locates. They're going to have to dig it up. They're going to have to fix it, all sorts of stuff. So your power outages are going to be longer, but fewer. And then also there's some, you saw what happened, I think it was in Seminole County when they had a water line break and one of the public works employees and I think 3 or 4 of their firemen were electrocuted because they didn't realize that when they were using the jaws of death, I think they clipped an electrical line and pretty much zapped everybody that was there. So, there's some dangers to that, but again, they prefer more of the above ground than below ground. And we actually priced that out for the entire town and it's $40 million. And again, right now it's $6 million in my total overall budget. So with that said, I have Hal's screen up. And he will start from, I believe, Main Street and then work his way down and around.
Thank you, Robert. My name is Hal with Kimley Horn. Thank you for the opportunity to come here and speak today concerning the 9th Avenue and Bessie project. Myself and Victor Gallo are on the call from Kimley Horn. So we will be here to present this project to answer any questions that you may have. Just a few speaking points before I do start is that, like Robert said, this is a conceptual study. So we're not moving forward with final design until we get everybody's input and get the direction to move forward from town council. So at this point, this is purely just a study to show you a concept that meets the Florida Green Book, as Robert stated, for the roadway and the shoulders. And for the ditches, we have to meet FEMA standard of a 25-year design for a 25-year storm event for areas of flood hazard. So that's what controls the design of our roadside ditches. And really what we're trying to accomplish is to mitigate the current effect of during rain events where the runoff is using the road as a means of conveyance and causing washouts. We're trying to design a system in which the road is properly sloped and that the swales are properly designed so that the water gets captured and conveyed to the correct location, and also provide some water quality treatment with the swales as it goes to the low points and eventually into the lake. But we're going to provide some treatment before it goes into the lake and you won't have the sediment flowing into it. So our focus was to meet these standards, which are required for the funding. But then also our not secondary, but one of our prime objectives was to avoid as many trees as possible. So we've been out there, and I was out there on Monday actually, measuring trees, painting lines off, and we've come up with a plan to minimize as many tree impacts as possible. There are a few tree impacts, and with those, we would partner with the town, and the town arborist would look at those and evaluate those prior to making any decision of whether or not we can remove those trees. And then finally, sometimes in my presentation, I might say edge of pavement because that's a standard nomenclature for engineers. But if I do, I apologize. This road will be absolutely a dirt road. There is no asphalt paving involved with this project. And so with that, I will turn it to my exhibits and I'll kind of go through the plan view. And I'll also show you some typical sections. I'm going to work my way starting from 9th and Main. So on the screen, if you see my cursor, right here, I'll use the hand. So
real quick, they want to know if you're going to be able to zoom in and zoom out. So once you do the overall for each section, if you can zoom in, and maybe there's some questions from the people that live on this typical section or this section, then we can address those. Sure. But that's again,
Sure. So I'll zoom in a little bit now, and I don't mind kind of panning as I go. And that way you can get a better picture. And then if you definitely want to look at a specific parcel, I'm happy to do that. As a point of reference, Main Street is here, going north-south, 9th, west to east. As you know, north is up on the map. So as Robert stated, the Florida Green Book, the minimum standard for a two-way road is 18 feet. So that's why we have laid out this 18-foot dirt road in concept. So if you look at where you see this brown area and you look at the legend, that's the proposed 18-foot dirt road, okay? Where you see this lighter shade of green adjacent to the dirt road, that's gonna be your shoulder with sodding. So that's gonna be graded as a shoulder and sodded. So it's just basically a flat area. So we have a 3-foot shoulder on one side and a 6-foot shoulder on the other side. The 6-foot shoulder being also available for installation of water lines with this project. Now, the proposed swale and sodding is the darker green. And through a majority of this project, it's 14-foot max. I will get into the portion by the lake where we're asking for a little bit more, but everywhere where it's adjacent to a home, it's a maximum of 14 feet. And as Robert stated, this is a maximum value. This is the upstream end. Everything, as you're aware, flows down towards Lake Bessie. And so the swales could be smaller in this area, but we won't know until we go through the final design process. And then finally, the existing dirt road, I know it's a little bit hard to see since there's a lot of colors and patterns going on, but if you see this red cross-hatched, that's the existing dirt road. And I've tried to provide you with some dimensions for existing as well. For instance, existing is 18 feet here, 16 feet here, and then it's 18 feet here. So I'll go block by block. So this is the first block, which is between Main Street and Oakdale. And so actually in this area, the existing road is roughly 18 feet, varies from 16 to 18. And it's a relatively open area on the north side. And that's why we chose the north side for our swale. And also there's also a newly constructed home here where they have a swale system that's already in place, and we would just utilize that. There are some trees here. And usually when you see a cell that's kind of a cyan color, that looks like a canopy, that's a tree. So we've done our absolute best to go through and minimize tree impacts. So you can see, for instance, here, we jogged the alignment to avoid this tree, and then we jogged it back to avoid this tree. And this does two things. It minimizes tree impacts as well as traffic calming because the road is just not a straight shot.
Yeah, Harold, real quick too, and we hate to keep interrupting you.
No.
And when we say trees, we mean trees. When you take a look out there, you see maybe some little palms and some hedges and stuff like that. We're going to work with the property owners, if we're going to be disrupting some of the landscaping that's in front of their homes, is to try to move those or transplant those to the back of the swale area. Again, so we're not trying to disrupt your lives. We're just trying to, again, take care of the stormwater as much as possible. But we're trying to protect, again, those huge, healthy trees that create that large canopy. But as you'll see when we get further down, there's a lot more vegetation that we're trying to protect as well. But these trees are typically 8-inch DBHs or more, correct? How?
And then when you see a symbol that looks like this, that is a storm drain pipe with what we call a mired end section, which is an outfall on both sides. And really what we want to do is we want to interconnect these swales so that they keep on flowing with the design to where we want to direct it, which is a small retention area that we're proposing over by Lake Bessie. So that's a little description of what you see on your screen. The road, in order to minimize the swell, we've pitched the road in one direction. So when you see an arrow like that, the road is sloping down in that direction to the shoulder, to the swell. By doing that, we avoid having swells on both sides, which would be more intrusive to trees and possibly plantings adjacent to your property. So I'm going to move to the next block. So there are no tree impacts within this block. Now, this next block is east of Oakdale. And on this one, there are two smaller trees here that we believe could potentially be relocated with this improvement. That's something that we will evaluate with the town arborist. They are smaller trees, but we do understand that those are important. So we will definitely work with the town to see what we can do to possibly relocate those trees. But you have the same 18-foot width, and we do, the area on the north side is more open, less vegetation, less trees. So we keep the swale on the north side as well. The existing road does get a little narrower as you get past Oakdale Street. We measure it to be approximately 12 feet in this area existing.
How, before you move on to, the structure that is currently to the northwest is going to transfer the water to the northeast. I know there's a structure that's at the northwest that transfers stuff or stormwater to the southeast. Is that correct?
Yes, we were going to remove that pipe or plug it because we don't want to direct it in that manner anymore. We want to direct it to our design swales to take care of it.
Right. And then I think Tom Fry is on as well, and I spoke to him earlier, and then we're going to be taking a look at trying to utilize some of that area that's in front of, on the east side of Oakdale to try to remediate some of this, maybe doing the same type of pitch in a project. But we'll try to see if we can work on that in a self-funded project.
So I'm going to show you the typical section because I think we've talked about the plan view. So a typical section, like Robert stated, is a section of the roadway that is generally what it will look like. We can meander it to avoid trees like I've shown you, but this shows the 3-foot shoulder, which in this case would be on the south side. You have your 2 9-foot travel lanes, which will be dirt. Your existing dirt road varies from 10 to 18 feet through 9th Avenue. You'll have your 6-foot shoulder where there will be potable water, and then you'll have a 14-foot maximum swale. And these buffers to the right-of-way will vary because I am jogging the alignment to avoid tree impacts. So this is what the typical section would look like. So we're going to move down, and so in this area, there is a large tree over here which we wanted to avoid, and there are also some trees here that we wanted to avoid. So we actually shifted the alignment to the south in this area, as you can see. And these is where the existing power poles are. And I know that in this area you have a lot of ponding and washouts. And so we're designing this continuous interconnected swale system to alleviate that. And we're going to pipe it across East Boulevard and then into this this retention area here. So that will hold the water, that will provide some treatment and some storage. And then if the storm event is heavy enough, it will overtop and go into the lake. But by the fact that the waters run through all the swales and this retention area, a lot of that sediment would have been removed or will be removed before it overtops and goes into the lake during heavy storm events. Now, there is an impact to an existing 24-inch oak here. It was a tough decision because you can see that we have trees here and a very large, nice oak here. And we have this one, which I'm not an arborist, which did not appear to be in very good condition when I went out there with town staff. But we're not going to touch this oak until an arborist goes out and takes a look at it and gives us their evaluation. But with the current alignment that I have shown, the oak is on the edge of the dirt road that we're proposing.
Yeah, and to reiterate, how staff and I think some of the neighbors even out there can attest to that tree really isn't in the best shape. We always try to take a look if we can inject it with nutrients, so on and so forth, to maybe save that tree. But that one, just based on our own observations as lay people, it doesn't look like it's the healthiest tree. And how what you also see, and you're probably described here too, is that this intersection is not going to be curved anymore. It's going to be teed. And we're intending on teeing up that intersection, and putting up stop signs to hopefully, number one, slow down the speeding, and number two, deter people from utilizing this as a cut through.
Correct. So, so the existing road is curved right through here, which you can kind of see the red hash from my cursor. And I do understand that there are some safety concerns with people traveling at high rates of speed around the curve. So one way to alleviate that and to calm the traffic is we've designed a T intersection that would tie into East and 9th, and also tie into this driveway here for the property to the south. And it would be stop controlled. It will likely be stop controlled in all 3 directions, but we'll determine that in design along with some input from the town. So once we get to East Boulevard, we're going to do a pipe crossing into this retention area. You can kind of think of it as, it'll be dry retention, it won't be wet, but it'll be a couple of feet deep, kind of what you see over in Fernwood Park, but a little bit smaller. And we're going to use that as a small retention area, spreader swell, to hold the water and provide some treatment before it overtops. Okay.
Now, how can you do the same thing with Fernwood Park by making that a rain garden?
Yes, we can. So definitely, if that's the desire, we can definitely do some nice plantings in there. The rain gardens should be aesthetically pleasing and also provide some additional water quality before that water overtops during a heavy storm event and goes into the lake. Okay. Now, as we head onto East Boulevard, so now I'm going to work on East Boulevard, which is north to south, south to north. We have more area than just the right-of-way because the town owns the park area as well. And there is a nice row of pine trees that run all along that area. So our approach is in order to preserve those pine trees, we will do our 3-foot, our 18-foot, and our 6-foot shoulder. But then we'll have a 10 feet of undisturbed area. And then our swale will actually be 18 foot in this area, which is what we recommend, just because in this area we are making the road wider from 10 to 18, and there's some flows coming across. And really, when we do the 25-year storm event calculation, it does require an 18 feet. And that 25-year requirement is because of FEMA and because of funding. So if we were to go with the funding mechanism, we would have to demonstrate to FEMA that in this area that we can contain the 25-year storm event with our swales. And this is why it's a little bit larger. We did choose to put it on this side so that it's not impactful for the residents on the west, and that it'll be nicely graded with shallow slopes and it's sodded. That is something that is more than 14 feet, which I wanted to make you aware of.
And how this still allows for access to the boat ramp. As you can see, they have a pipe going underneath. So you're not going to hit a dip or anything like that while accessing the boat ramp over at Lake Bessie.
Correct. 100%. We are not proposing taking away any access to public or private residences. Every access point, whether it be a dirt driveway, a gravel driveway, we will provide a side drain, and it will be level for you to use, and it will not be impacted. So I apologize, but I kind of had to turn the exhibit. So now north is going to be to your right. So we're traveling along east from south to north. So in this area, we put the swell on this side. We wanted to avoid these pine trees in here. So we basically worked our way from the pine trees over. And unfortunately, in order to fit the typical section of the 3, 18, and 6, we had to, there is an impact to this existing, I believe it's a Chinaberry tree. We can definitely have an arborist look at that, but that is an impact as well. And you can see it's going to be, towards the edge of the dirt road, kind of almost in the middle of the southbound lane. It's right where my cursor is. But with this approach, we save a lot of trees on this side of the lake side. Okay. Through here, there is actually, this is an existing retention area. So we're not impacting trees at all in this area. We're actually going to just kind of clean that up, grade it, give it a little bit more volume, make it function a little bit better. And actually, there are two, and I don't think I see it in the survey, but where the swale is, oh, here it is. With the swale, there is 2 oak trees right here that are really nice, and we're going to end our swale before that, so we're not going to be impacting any trees in this area. Okay. Now I kind of turn the corner. I'm going to be heading west to east on 8th Avenue. This area, as you know, has a curb and gutter because it's the closest point to the lake, and there's no room to grade a swell, and it's pretty close to the lake, so I think that the curb and gutter is a good idea, and I want to keep that. So what we're doing is that we are running curb and gutter along the south side with curb inlets to catch the runoff, and eventually it's going to get piped. It will get piped into this retention area. And then there's an existing overflow control structure. And eventually during a heavy storm event, it will overtop the control structure and go to the lake. But this area is meant to provide treatment before it does so. Okay. So I'm going to go to the next page. So sorry, but so now north is to your right still. Now this area here gets really tight. And this is actually a very difficult area. I went out and looked at it again on Monday just to make sure I had a firm grasp of it. So I'm gonna zoom in real quick for you and show you what we're dealing with. Right as you come around the corner, there is a 34-inch oak tree and a 29-inch oak tree that I definitely want to avoid, and I know that the residents would like that as well. And so I really started with that as my constraint. And then I laid the road to the west. So what happens is that if you see the existing road here, which is this dash line here, the proposed road will be slightly inside the existing here, and it will be slightly outside of the existing here. And really, in order to avoid the trees, this is as close as I could get to the trees, and we'll definitely vet that with an arborist, but just from my experience and walking out there and measuring and also looking at the topo in great detail, I think that this alignment avoids the trees, but it does basically match the existing dirt road where it is now as you come around the curve.
But it does actually overtake my property. So you can see your right of way is inside the road. So
that is correct, sir.
We need to fix that.
Sure. And that's something that we need to discuss, Robert. If we were to get it completely out of the existing road is inside this property line that you see here in red. And so if we wanted to shift this over, Robert, we would possibly risk impacting these trees. So this is why I zoomed in, because this is an area of constraint that we need to definitely look at and discuss.
What about a one-way there, make it a 9-foot instead of an 18-foot?
That's something town council would have to give us direction on. At this point, they have not given us direction on making any roadways a one-way.
They didn't know you're encroaching on my property either, though, probably.
Well, I mean, understand again, and as I emailed you as well, we're going to be going out there and we'll meet with you and we'll see how maybe we can reduce what the perceived impacts are to the right of way. Again, understand everybody believes that it is their property, but it is actual right of way, but we're going to try to reduce as much impacts as possible to the perceived.
I'm reading it. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but I'm reading your red line as the right of way, which means I own the property on the inside of that. Is that not the case?
That is correct, Robert.
So if that's the case, then you're at least 6 feet on my property with this road.
Yeah, I know how we're going to have to figure out something to stay within the right of way.
Correct. And Robert, and the existing road, I don't know the history of it, but the existing road is on the property based upon our right-of-way survey. So
yeah, we tried to fix that before, and I thought it was fixed, but I didn't have a radius to determine whether or not. I know Scott did some work out there, but yeah, apparently it's still on my property.
Yeah, well, we may have to look at doing piping in this area or something, and we'll brainstorm it, Joe, and we'll try to get it off your property, not only the roadway, but everything else.
All right, well, we can talk about it tomorrow too.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, and my bad on that. when I looked at this, I didn't catch that. When you said it was your property, I was, I hear that every time.
Yeah, sure. I get it.
This is on your property, and that's something that we don't want, because that's a liability, and I want to reduce the amount of liability as much as possible. So we'll get out there, Joe, and we'll talk about it.
Okay, thanks.
Robert, this might be an area where we reduce it down to 16 feet just because of this constraint. And maybe we do a curve that is called a compound curve to pull it out. So basically it would look more like this, and then I would bring it back in.
Well,
So
anything the speed is
table.
crazy there too. I mean, anything, again, this is another area that's got safety concerns in my mind. I'm watching people speed through here all day. So if there's a way to make that corner more treacherous to people, that would be awesome.
Yeah, we're probably gonna have to look at piping, maybe some other alternatives as well. We'll get out there, Joe, tomorrow. We'll talk to you.
Okay.
Again, this is just concept, and that's why we're here today, is talk to the people that directly impacted to get input like this. So thanks for that.
What time are you going to be out there tomorrow? This is Martin.
Hey, Martin. I have one meeting early in the morning, so I'll probably be out there around, I would say 9:30. And I'll be walking it probably until about 11:30, 12 o'clock.
So I just, my pet peeve is those gutters in front of Joe's house are lower than the outfall of the retention area right now. It was a mistake when they first did that. I'm just hoping you guys will correct that, because when that existing retention area gets filled up, it shunts out of the gutter in front of Joe's house down to the lake. So perhaps you need to correct that at the same time. I'll look for you.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, the pipes are going to be removed and replaced with new ones, correct, Hal?
It's a brand new piping system. It's going to be properly designed, and that fix is part of the solution.
I think they're talking about the gutters.
Right, the gutters. I mean, but he's saying it's backing up into the gutter, so it may be the pipes, the pipe inverts and things like that. But both the flow below the pipes will be properly sized at the right grades to convey the water properly, so it doesn't back up, and the gutter will be at the right elevation and pitched in the right direction so that it flows correctly on the surface as well.
Thank you.
So we're not saving any of that existing. We're going to do a new gutter, do new pipes, do new inlets.
And we'll take a look at those trees too to determine the health as well. Because again, we've marked them that they're on there, but we'll have an arborist take a look at them to see the health. And then again, determine what we can do. If there's a possible way that we can tee it up or do something to, slow down the traffic, or to make sure that they're stopping, or some, we'll come out there, we'll try to brainstorm and come up with some ideas that are probably outside the box to try to solve that issue.
Cool, thanks. One other question on that. I didn't see any kind of dry retention here. So where's all this water going here in this part?
All this water is going to this retention area here, that existing area which we're going to expand, which we're going to excavate out and expand a little bit.
Okay, I got you.
Yep. And then really that's the only place we have for it. So, but like I said, we're not keeping any of the existing pipes. We're going to redesign those and make sure that it functions properly. So now I'm going to move along Bessie, and we are jogging the swale here to protect this tree. Now there is a home that's currently under construction. It's at the low point of the basin. There's a driveway right here by these trees, and I know that there have been flooding problems that have been noted in the past. So that's why I was reluctant to stop the swale in this area, because I wanted to make sure that we had the proper swale in order to capture that runoff before it has the opportunity to get into this property here. And so, but with that, there are two smaller oak trees that are right where the swale needs to be in order to capture that. So that is something that we'd have to look at with an arborist as well. So with this plan overall, there's impacts to 4 trees total. So this would be number 3 and number 4. If this was up here, like where it was higher, as you can see, the ground drops off, and we're kind of getting into this bowl area right in here. So I was able to stop the swale, and I'm okay with not interconnecting the swales in this area to save these trees. But it was just right here with the history of a flooding issue. A swale is a good engineering design. It will work, but the trade-off is that there will be 2 trees there that could be impacted.
And how we'll work with Brad Cornelius and the property owner, depending upon the size of the trees, we could probably replace in kind depending upon, again, how many gallons or what the size is.
So a quick question. What I didn't see is anything to the north of 7th on this plan. And there's a ton of water, as you know, because obviously, Dave's house, one of the constructions gets flooded, and mine gets ruts in front of it. So there's a ton of water coming down the street, and you can see the grade here. Is there anything above 7th that will kind of mitigate some of this water coming from north of us?
Not as part of this project. The scope of this project goes up to 7th. We could definitely address that, but that would be an additional project, or we have to expand the project limits. But currently, based upon this project scope, we end at 7th Avenue.
Yeah. And each project that we do, we're finding more and more areas that definitely need attention, not only maintenance wise, but capital improvement wise. So we'll take a look at that, and maybe when we're doing our walkthrough, Joe, we can go ahead and walk up, because I do know that sometimes it does, because I think it drops down pretty fast up in that area as well. And I think we've had some washouts in the past.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, there's a garbage can deep rut right at 7th and Bessie I've seen.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's a system there, an existing pipe system that sends water east along 7th. And there's inlets at 3 quadrants of the intersection there. So it's supposed to be a basin boundary when the system is behaving properly.
Yeah, what's good too, again, with these new projects that we're putting in place, it's putting us at par to where we're able to, have a maintenance program with these projects, because I don't believe that we were provided with a maintenance program with previous projects like that. So again, taking care of the stormwater and then taking care of perpetual maintenance is going to be key for all the projects that we do from here on out.
Okay, and that's the end of the project limit. So I'll go ahead and I've kind of explained to you verbally and showed you in plan view, but this is on East Boulevard, where we are recommending a wider swale on the park side. Here is the curb and gutter system as you go around Lake Bessie on 8th. And then finally, this is the last run of Bessie Street up to 7th, and this is the swale on the east side. So with that, Robert, that sums up my presentation.
I'm sorry, one more general question on the sloping of the road. So I'm assuming there's some science behind this, but does the dirt under rain conditions not roll downhill and into the swales?
Well, right now, your topography varies, so there is not there's not really a defined low spot on the roadsides for it to roll into. So what I've seen out there is actually kind of just goes down the middle of the road during a heavy storm event.
Right. But what you're proposing is an angled, is a tilt, right? So in that tilt, is the dirt not going to kind of follow gravity and go toward the swale, the dirt as well as the water?
Yes.
I have a question about what is the final surface composition of the road top? Is it going to be a composite, or is it going to be just sand, or what are the plans of the finished road surface?
Sure. So to answer the first question is that yes, with the dirt road, you will have to, Public Works will have to maintain those swales. Some of the sediment from the road will wash into the swales along with the runoff. And so the swales will have to be maintained from time to time in order for it to function properly. And also the road would have to be graded at times as well. That's just the nature of the dirt roads and the erosion that comes with that. Now for the dirt road, we're envisioning a stabilization type mixture of dirt and other materials to compact it. But we haven't finalized the material for the dirt road yet. That's something that we'll do during design, and we're happy to receive input on that as well.
Will the budget allow a composite mixture, something that's not as susceptible to washout?
I'm hopeful that that will be allowed, because I agree that would be less susceptible to washout.
We would need town council to approve what type of composite we utilize. Again, the intent and the direction of them was to maintain the dirt roadways. If that does what council agrees to by having, more stabilized base, still with the dirt look and feel, then we would ask them for direction on moving forward with that. Okay. As we said before, this is for you, the residents that live directly, being impacted by these. I'll be out there. I'm not sure if Scott's going to be out there tomorrow or not, but I'm going to be out there probably with Travis too, walking up and down these roadways. So if you see me, I'll be dressed down a little bit. But please, contact me. My contact information's in the chat box. I know most of you, I've seen most of you. I've got a lot of emails from a lot of you. So again, feel free, just you're not bugging us. It's our jobs to give you the information, and we'll try to work through this to make sure that, we're not going to make everybody happy. And I don't think we're going to make everybody 100% happy, but at least we can come to some sort of happy medium to where we understand that we have an issue we have to resolve, and we're trying to do it in as minimal as a way as possible. But with that said, we can open up to anybody as far as questions. So,
hey, Robert.
Yes, sir.
It's Bill Bardo. What are you going to do with the existing sprinkler systems that are going to be affected by this? And I have a pipe that runs all the way to the lake for my irrigation system that runs across that swale.
Yeah, anything that is right now is in the right of way is your responsibility. We'll move the mailboxes. We'll take care of the driveways. But anything that you put inside that right of way is going to be up to you to move and relocate. Now, I think John's on here as well. And, typically we have him as project manager, and he lives pretty much, just down the street from these projects. But typically when we work with the contractor, and we'll notify you when we're going to be doing it, is that we'll cut and cap those irrigation lines. And then you're going to have to contact your landscaper irrigation firm to reset the zones and put in sprinkler heads.
Well, I don't want to sound ungrateful or anything, but it seems like I've been taking care of the town's right of way for quite a number of years with those sprinklers, and now it's my responsibility to move them out of the way.
Understood.
Well, what about the pipe that goes from runs underground down to Lake Bessie across the boat ramp area?
Again, it depends on the depth of it, and then we can enter into a right-of-way use agreement to where you can maintain that, but it has to be at a depth that we can agree to. Anything that's put in the right-of-way without our permission, was put in without our permission, or, if it was with our permission, it was with the understanding that if we ever came back to do any improvements, that cost would be borne by the person that is putting stuff within our right-of-way.
Well, it's only the only cost would be just cutting the pipe and reattaching it low at a lower depth, but that pipe's been there for over 50 years, so it's just not like it's pretty much grandfathered in, I would think.
It's not grandfathered in, because what we would do is probably cut and cap it, and then wherever you would have to utilize to reconnect that pipe. Now, if we can do it without busting that pipe, then we'll see what we can do. But again,
are there going to be any cross berms in any of these swales where they, swale berm, or are they just all swale?
It's all swales.
Okay.
So
Does any chance we could locate that pipe? Could they put a berm across the swale right there where it wouldn't be affected?
yeah, it depends on how deep that pipe is.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, Bill, it really depends upon when you guys ran that initially and ran it up the right of way. And we'll look at that. And most of the contractors are pretty good about that stuff. And so if we hit something, we'll cap it. And then we'll just work with you throughout the process for you to get it either back out of the swale or up into an area that's high and away from it. But at that point, it's kind of, your nickel to try and figure out how we do it. But the contractors have usually been pretty good working with you guys.
Okay.
And Robert, in your video, you mentioned that you'll do concrete aprons. I didn't hear anything about, is that the case? And of course I'm talking about mine, which is like a 4-car garage. So where would the apron be? And do we have any say in where that goes and how it goes?
The apron will be, or the concrete driveway will be exactly where your current location is.
I have 4 pads and then grass in front of it. So it's a little odd for me, but so.
Yeah, again, anything that's in the right of way, but we'll try to work with you on whatever's within there to, of course, to a reason. Some people have pavers, exactly like we're having with West 2nd Avenue. Again, they'd have to do the right-of-way use agreements for, and they put pavers within the right-of-way because they want a more aesthetically looking connection to our right-of-way. They understand that they're going to have to pull those pavers up if we have to go ahead and do any improvements within that. But we give you enough time to work with whatever companies that you deal with as far as paving, or not paving, but pavers or landscapers, because again, we're not going to be starting construction for months. So when we get to final design and then we actually move forward with bidding and so on and so forth, we would still have about a month and a half to 2 months before we start construction or notice to proceed. And then again, we'll work with you guys on timing and any and all issues that you might have. But yes, that they will be concrete aprons because we want to make sure that we're, again, flowing our stormwater into the areas where we can catch it.
Okay.
Rick and I have several comments. Not only do we have sprinklers that came with the house as we purchased it, we have a well that is in the right of way. Now, I didn't put that well there. That well, as far as I know, has been there. The same people owned our house for 44 years. So you guys want to come along and do a project. There's existing swales. And for 3 years now, Rick and I have been saying, the property across the street from us, the Glances at 220 East 9th Street, filled in their swales. And they've slowly been, there's nothing left to it. They did it when they did reconstruction. So it's not like they were grandfathered in and that they didn't have to have water retention. They were approved to do an addition. Their swales in front of their entire length of their 187 foot of their property, barring their driveway, that swale was filled in. Then you've got 2 new houses that get constructed across the street from us. And from the day they broke ground, and I do mean the literal day, because they came out and I had found out from friends that were realtors that it wasn't even supposed to be closing yet. And then we see ground moving equipment over there. We immediately called the city and said, what's going on? Is there a permit to construct? Because as far as we know, those 2 properties have not even closed. And we find out that they had closed early and they had started groundbreaking work and digging. They looked like they were digging a swimming pool and they had no permit to even start work. And from that day through the entire construction process, my husband and I called the town. We called Brad Cornelius, the zoning officer, and said, they're not keeping the dust down. They're not maintaining the swales, which is required per current code during the entire construction process, as well as putting the swales back. So we have 4 non-functioning swales in front of our house. 1 in front of 836 Oakdale, which is not his fault. I know he's on the call, I believe. And they bought it that way. That's not on them. That was on the contractor. And that was on Public Works to make sure that that right of way was approved property. Brad Cornelius did everything he could to make sure that that house and the other newly constructed house beside us got their swales the best that they could, not allowing their septic tanks to be near the swales, whatever. But when it came down to the actual approval of the swales, that was Public Works' responsibility. And they came out and they approved the grading of it before the sod was put on. Then you guys add the sod. 90% of the water in the, if we're calling this the Bessie Basin, which I'm very familiar with basins, and I don't think we're looking at the whole Bessie Basin here with the extent of the project limits, but the Bessie Basin, 90% of that water is coming from Oakdale Street, not 9th. There's almost nothing that comes from Maine all the way to Oakdale. And even the first half of Oakdale between us and the people across the street from us on Oakdale, the Glances, there's no water runoff from there. So you're coming along after the Glances filled theirs during a recent renovation after 2016, after I purchased my home. 2 new properties across the street from me that built theirs, and their swales weren't done right. And now after all that, you guys let them fill in their swales, you let them not function properly, you let the culvert get fill up underneath, and now you want to run the swale down the entire length of my yard. And now you're telling us that it's going to be our dime to move entire sprinkler systems, to move the well that we have out there that's existing, which was our potable well, by the way, and it's all on our dime. So it was our potable, however you say the damn word, I don't care. It was our drinking water when we moved there.
Wow.
And now all this is supposed to be on our dime because you want to come along and build a project without fixing what's existing. That is going to create an economic hardship to me and my husband, because I don't have an irrigation company. I don't have a mowing company like the $1 million house across the street from me. We maintain everything ourselves. Oh, I'm glad you think that's funny, Robert. Whatever.
I'm not
But
laughing.
you guys want to come down and you've got major impacts to some houses and then not impacts to other houses, and then come along and tell us it's on our dime. Nobody's even asked us why are we doing concrete everywhere? Why can't we do impervious surface? All we're doing is adding to or pervious surface. All we're doing is adding to the situation that we already have. And if you fix the existing swales, we wouldn't even be going through any of this mess. Also, during your little video, you made a comment about the power pole being private. We'd like to know exactly what that's all about, because we don't own that telephone pole.
Well, Brandy, number one, can we break it up into separate questions? Because right now it's going on for like a few minute, comment thing. So the first thing is that you made a comment was people filling in swales, so on and so forth. Brad Cornelius and Wade Trim, for all the projects that we have actively going on, if they have filled in swales, if they are not meeting their current stormwater retention guidelines, then they're going to go to code enforcement. So if they have done that, again, they're going to go to code enforcement, understanding that they're only responsible for the first 1 inch. Anything else after that, it's going to go on to into the stormwater system.
Not in the public right of way. According to what Brad Cornelius told me, it is not in the public right of way. He has the right to say something during construction if they are filling in the swales that they need to keep it open and maintained. We reported it several times. It never made it to code enforcement. However, after final certificate of occupancy, when the CO is issued, he told me he has no purview over what happens in the city's public right of way, only what the actual property limits are for the proposed construction.
And if
that falls on public works.
And I'm answering your question, if they filled it in or they didn't maintain it to the standards that was approved for the permit or whatever agreement in the right-of-way use agreement with the town, then they're in violation. That's a code enforcement issue. Now, as far as the capping of, if you bought a home and, as far as due diligence or anything like that, and your well is on somebody else's property, I'm sorry, it's on you. That is not on the town. That would be.
Why isn't it grandfathered in? Everything else is. I mean,
it's town property. I can't be more clear in that. It's a town property that we can utilize to maintain what we need to maintain. So if you have something on somebody else's property and they want to develop that property, it's up to you to remove that. Now, as far as irrigation lines, to cut and cap that, as far as a total cost, again, we try to be as reasonable as possible. And again, that 14 feet is a max. So if we can capture a lot of that stormwater prior to it getting to your residence and reduce that amount, we'll try to do that through design. But as far as your well, as far as the irrigation lines, again, anything that's within the right of way, we only take care of the driveways for your access and making sure that your mailboxes are going to be in the appropriate spot, but everything else is on the dime of that property owner. And again, as I said before, the anything that is a code violation. Again, Brad Cornelius is working all the way back when we were working with Orange County for Butler, 7th, West 2nd Avenue, and this area. To
Okay,
make sure
then you
that
explain
anything-
to us why are the four swales around me on the side in front of 836 and the swale on the one to the north of 836 and 220 East 9th Street? Why are none of them functioning? You literally walked in the video along the one swale there and said how there's no muck in it and there's no sand in it. No kidding, because none of the water from the road physically makes it into the swale on the south end of that property. So of course there's no sediment in it. Of course there's no muck in it. It looks very nice and cleaned out because it's not functioning. But so you're saying that it's a code enforcement case. We've been telling you guys from the moment construction started till the day of certificate of occupancy, these aren't working. They're not right. It's not taking the water from the road. And now you want to come and put that same kind of crap in our front yard that won't be maintained. And you're trying to fix a problem that may not exist if you would fix the swales that exist. I mean, they've been there. They were there before. They worked before. And 90% of this water flow, and I would like to ask how much of the water flow in this basin for the calculations you've done for modeling, for the hydrology modeling, how much of it are you showing is physically coming from Main Street? Because I did hear on the Butler project that you consider Main Street to be the divider line for the Butler Basin. So I assume that's also true for the Bessie Basin. But what portion of the water is coming from that or from the individual 4 properties that are along my block? And how much of it is coming from Oakdale Street and all the new houses that have been constructed since the laws have changed?
So as part of this project, Victor did and I did define a basin area. And as you can see, 9th Avenue is, although the topography varies, Main Street is the high point. So it does make its way down to East Boulevard through this area to Lake Bessie. And as you can see, the sharp drop where you have a lot of your washouts occurring right here where the power poles are. There are some offsite flows as well, which we've accounted for. So we've accounted for flows within the right of way, which is something that the town has to take care of as part of the stormwater improvement. Now, whether or not the properties should be flowing towards the right of way, I can't speak to that, but if it's the historical condition is that they're flowing towards the right of way, then as an engineer, I have to account for that historical drainage pattern.
So you have not accounted for the storm swales that run on the west side of Oakdale Street, starting at 9th for the first 2 properties or even up to the 3rd, because that's where the swales stop. Because those are huge swales and they convey the majority of the water that is now going to be popping out in the culvert on our side of the street, because it's the majority of the water flow is coming from Oakdale. I watch it every single storm event. I have hundreds of videos of it.
Victor, can you speak a little bit more detail on the basin that you defined at Oakdale?
Yeah, so based on the latest LiDAR contours, our basin coming from 9th west of Oakdale doesn't have anything from the south coming to 9th, but the parcels to the north do drain in a south and eastern pattern. So when we design our swale system along 9th, we will have to establish connectivity to any kind of drainage pattern coming from the north to the south, including the current drainage pattern of Oakdale Street, which comes to this intersection from the north. So, when we design this system, we have to consider the existing conditions, which is water coming from the north side of 9th, coming to 9th, and from Oakdale coming to the intersection.
Okay, so what percentage of the overall CFSs that you guys calculated for are coming from Oakdale Street versus 9th?
So our basin boundary shows that half of Oakdale comes to the intersection, and half the rest of the intersection of Oakdale from 9th to 8th has a drainage pattern of going through the parcels and through that town block into the East Boulevard on the downstream side. So about, I mean, I don't have the areas because I don't have the CAD drawings in front of me, but half of Oakdale Street between 9th and 8th, we have it coming into this intersection here.
And we do have a basin map that we could share, right, Victor?
Yeah, it's in the plan set that we provided, I think the last go around. I don't have it with me because I'm at home right now. Yeah, we do have a basin area that we can share as soon as I get to the office. Yeah.
Sure, and this is Brandy speaking, correct?
Yes, it is.
Yes. So we do have a basin map, but as you know, basin maps are somewhat convoluted, a little bit complicated to show just from a public standpoint. But if you want to see that technical data, we will provide that basin map to Robert, and you can request that from Robert, and he can share it if you want to take a look and review that.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Hal and Victor.
No problem.
My comment still stands though. I mean, it's so I get to lose a well, 3 trees, a sago, change my driveway from gravel to concrete, a giant swale in my yard because of properties around us not doing what they're supposed to. And did we get a straight answer on the power pole, Robert?
I think Robert had to step away for a little bit. So the power pole on the east of your property between yours and the Bardot's has a triplex on it. That's the type of cable, and it goes to a private service pole. So that would be owned by the property owners, and that's something you could certainly take up with Duke Energy. I'm sure they'd be able to explain that to you better. I just ran into that same situation actually yesterday down the street on Main Street on Dirt Main, and they explained all that to me again. So anytime there's a service line on it, it goes to a private pole from the Duke Energy pole. But I encourage you to follow up with Duke Energy, and I'm sure they can provide a better explanation.
Hal, you said, Hal, let me jump to the concrete apron question. When we walked the 7th and Butler Street project, you said that the concrete apron could be gravel or mulch or dirt or some other pervious material. Does that apply to this project as well for the driveways?
So I do not believe that there is a Green Book standard for driveway material. So that would be up to the discretion of the town what the driveway material you would want to specify. So there is no standard that says it has to be concrete.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, hey, Bill, typically what we like to do is replace driveway with like kind. So if there's driveways coming into the right of way, they're disturbed by the piping or the swales or whatever, we typically come back. And one of the things that Scott and I like to do is bring back concrete because of the maintenance within the right of way. And so that's one of the things that we always try and achieve.
Right, but if it's a gravel driveway or mulch or whatever, that's an option as well, correct?
It could be, but typically we put back like kind. So if it's a mulch driveway or a gravel driveway, we'll put the gravel back, we'll put the mulch back.
Right.
If it's concrete, we'll put the concrete back.
Gotcha. Well, my question stemmed from the fact that we were told that the minimum standard dictated concrete aprons for the driveways, and that wasn't the case, and that, as we learned yesterday. So I just want to clarify that for Brandy and anybody else that has a driveway crossing.
Who said it was a minimal standard to concrete?
When we
You
were
did
showing
in your video.
No, I said that we typically utilize concrete because it's the easiest way to make sure that we're not getting anything into those swale systems, but never, ever, you can check all the videos that say that a concrete apron is a minimal standard. That is not. That is typically what we do with a lot of projects. And again, if you're going to use some sort of pervious surface, you're still going to have to build that up, correct? How?
And the thing is, and it's not a requirement, but it is lower maintenance. So as a property owner, if you decide to go with something else and it gets eroded, then you'll have to, then it's just an additional maintenance item that the town would incur if it's within the right of way. But that is up to the town, up to the residents on what material you would like your driveways to be as we go through with these side drains.
Yeah, that's where the right-of-way use agreements come in. If people want pavers, they want something different. Again, the maintenance and or the perpetual maintenance of that would be on the property owner themselves if they're not going to be concreted in. But at no time did I say it was a minimum standard or a green book standard.
No, the minimal
You said it
standards
was
that
minimal.
were provided to us on the original documentation for the 7th and Butler Street project showed concrete aprons, and we were told the concrete aprons were going to be put in. But when I talked to Howe and Scott yesterday or 2 days ago, they said the concrete is not actually required, that we could use gravel or some other thing. So I'm trying to just clarify that for Brandy.
Yeah, that's fine.
And if I show concrete driveway aprons in my conceptual plans, I apologize for that. That is usually what's typically done, but I know that Windermere is very unique and you have your preferences. So as an engineer, I will let you guys choose the material for your driveways. That is not a design aspect that is in my purview.
Thank you, Howe.
I have another question. If you got a minute. On these sprinkler systems and the grass and the swales, are you going to be the grass swales, are they going to be St. Augustine like my yard is?
We're put in like kind.
I'm sorry, I have a St. Augustine grass yard. Is the swales going to be continuous to that, be St. Augustine? If I'm moving my sprinkler system, I'm still going to have to water your right of way or it's all going to die. So I don't understand why you can't, cough up a few dollars compared to the massive project that this is money you're going to spend on this project to fix the sprinkler system so it waters your grass in your right of way. And also, I don't see you're asking, this is quite an impact on all of us. It's to me, it's it's a very small price to pay to maintain a sprinkler system that's going to be watering your grass and keeping it alive. Because I tell you right now, St. Augustine without sprinklers on it dies.
If council agrees to incorporate the cost of irrigation within the town right of way or to subsidize residents for that cost, then so be it.
Yeah, but you're not really subsidizing me for my costs. You're expecting me to water your grass.
Hey, Bill, let me tell you from a resident living in the town of Windermere, one of the things that we've always tried to do to maintain is that we always try and replace sod for like kind. But
yes.
I'm a resident that lives on Oakdale Street and I have irrigation that's out in the right of way. And whenever it gets chipped by the graders and whenever it gets dinged up, I go fix it because it's outside the bounds of my property line, but I still have the quiet enjoyment of having that.
Yeah, well, I do also.
So what I'm suggesting is that as a town resident, that all the town is asking is, hey, if you want St. Augustine going back, great. We'll put that back in when we engineer it and we redo the road. But all we want to do is make sure that you guys put the sprinkler systems back in to maintain it so it still looks green and all the other stuff. It's no different than me. When I get chipped, I go out and fix my sprinkler systems that are not on my property in the right of way. So that's what Robert was saying tonight, is that the irrigation that floats out into the right of ways are the responsibility of the homeowner, but the town will pay for the upgrade to put sod in that's consistent with what you already have in your yard.
I get that, but I wouldn't be repairing my sprinkler system if this project wasn't being put in.
I understand that, Bill. But at the end of the day, we all took the responsibility when we put stuff in the right of way and property we don't own. And then we also have to take the responsibility to repair it because we're out and we have the quiet enjoyment of having extended property beyond our property limits.
I understand repairing. What I don't understand is replacing.
Yeah,
That's a difference.
let's
No,
be
but
real
you
for
know
a
what?
minute.
But
When I-
the point is that it's on property that we don't own. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it's
John,
on,
So
Oh,
it's
wow.
on
We have
property
that
that
qua-
the town never maintained and I do.
Yeah, John,
well,
and when
that's the
I bought
choi-
my
that's the
house,
choice we
there's
made
no,
as residents. You
when we
know?
bought our house, John, with all due respect, when we bought our house, there's no sort of disclosure when I bought the house. Yes, I had a survey done. Yes, I fully knew where my property line was. Did I know where every sprinkler head was when I bought my house? No, because that's not
Hey,
something.
neither did I,
survey
Brandy.
finds.
I didn't either. I didn't
Yeah.
either.
Right.
You know
but
what?
did
And I
I
took
get
on
any?
that responsibility.
Hang on, John, I'm not finished. Did I ever
Okay.
get any sort of disclosure when I bought my house that says that I'm required to maintain it out to the road per some ordinance, even though it's town property? No, that's not some sort of packet of information, anything that could have been researched by a title company. It's not anything that a survey or the normal process of a real estate transaction is going to tell us. So when I bought my house, and actually the well was a whole nother issue. But as far as the
Yeah.
sprinklers being out there and knowing that the town had this ordinance to require people to maintain the property clear out to the road and everything that goes with that, I was not aware of that. And that may be very common
Brandy,
in
when you
Frankfurt
buy-
and there, but it's not
Brandy.
common in other towns.
Brandy, when you buy a piece of property, you maintain everything within your property lines. And I live up the street from you. And I know that if anything happens outside of my property limits and I want to maintain that for the principle of what I do and everything else, that's my responsibility. And I'll tell you, it's never been an issue with any of the other residents and all of the stormwater projects we've done for the last 12 years in this town, because people realize we eke out into the right of way for the quiet enjoyment of having our property come out farther than it really thinks it is. And we all take responsibility for that. And
Until they come and take the 25 foot, and then it doesn't matter.
Brandy, I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's beyond your property limits. And I can't, you know, as an engineer for the town and as, you know, a representative of everything that we're doing, anything that's within the right of way is the town's property.
Right. Right, I
Or
understand.
none.
So there's
That's
undue adverse impacts to some residents, and some residents will have things accommodated for.
There's a
and some
lot of
residents don't.
residents. There's a
Some
lot of
residents might
residents.
get multiple aprons, and some residents will have this avoided or that avoided or this avoided, and then other residents are just going to get multiple impacts and unexpected costs because of a project you guys want to install instead of fixing
That's not true.
what exists for
Every
a lot less money, just because the grant money's
Every-
there.
And just
every stormwater project we've done for the last 10 years, all the residents have taken responsibility for everything that they put out in the right of way. That's why we have right of way use permits. That's why we have all the things that are in place to ensure that if anybody wants to take advantage in the quiet enjoyment of everything beyond their property line, that they understand that they're taking the responsibility for that. And I'm sorry that your realtor didn't mention that to you, and I'm sorry for that. But at the end of the day, it's our responsibility as homeowners to understand my property line is here and everything out of bounds is not owned by me.
And therefore not by
Period.
requirement to maintain.
Okay, let's just hit a timeout button here, okay? If we're just talking about irrigation and the irrigation lines, PVC, some sprinkler heads, stuff like that. As far as a almost $2 million project, the cost of that is de minimis. So I will ask council if they would be willing to go ahead and set money aside for the repair and replacement of irrigation within those areas. The problem is that creates a slippery slope for all the other projects that we've done and all the projects that we've done in the past. The last example that we did was the Willows project. They all understood that, when we did the repaving of that project, that they would have to repair and replace those items that were within the town's right of way. So I would be more than happy to take it up with town council, but the town policy has always been is that if it's in the right of way, that is up to the property owner's responsibility to replace that. But as I said, I will take that up with town council on Tuesday night to see if they're willing to go ahead and add that as a additional cost that they're willing to absorb. So hopefully we can end that conversation. We'll see how town council decides on Tuesday. But as far as this back and forth relative to the irrigation lines, again, we'll see what happens on Tuesday night.
Hey, Robert, if I could just jump in for a second, I'm actually on that house, the corner of Oakdale and 9th, 836 Oakdale. And as Brandy said, I had nothing to do with any of the, anything that happened with the construction. I just bought it after it was fully built. I'm just curious. So I've noticed as well that I feel like Oakdale is more the source of water. That's just my own uneducated opinion. But I'm wondering with the swale that's to go in, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the gravel or the concrete driveway that we have in that area. Do you know if that would have to be torn out or what that would look like?
Yours is pavers, right? The gray pavers?
Yeah, it's like concrete pavers there at the end of the driveway, and it has a like a pipe through it to drain the water through.
You're the new house. You're the new house on 9th.
Yes. I did not build it though. I want to be very clear that was not me.
Clearly understood. I worked with the builder on that one. And
Okay.
Hal, can you address that? Did we determine if the invert of that existing pipe was good and that was going to remain? Hal, can you answer that question?
If it's a newly constructed home at Oakdale and 9th, just from our field visit, it looked like it was good. So we would use that existing pipe unless we found that it needed to be upsized. But since that's at the top of the kind of the upstream end, I think that it would be okay, but we'd have to take a more detailed look at that. And Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we were to have to upgrade that pipe, we would likely replace the driveway in kind, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But I know on our field conversation we were kind of weighing on the side that it may be okay. But absolutely, if it has to come out, be replaced, we'll put the concrete and everything back in for you.
And I agree. Just from looking on the field, it looked pretty good.
Got it. And from the perspective of Oakdale, I know it seems like there's a lot of water pooling there, and we do have a good sort of swale along Oakdale that it almost seems like the water doesn't get into that swale and stays on the street. That's just, again, my very uneducated view of things. I know a couple of neighbors have asked about, can we almost dig a small swale so that it goes into my larger swale from Oakdale, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But again, I don't really know. It seems to me like Oakdale is collecting a lot of water there.
On the swale is on the west side of Oakdale, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. As we said before, we're going to be implementing a lot of stopgaps until we have the money to actually do some of these additional projects. As I said before, $135,000 doesn't really fund much. That's why we try to get as many grants as possible.
Yes.
But yeah, we're going to make sure that we're, conducting an overall maintenance plan, reestablishing swales, doing what we can as far as stopgaps until we can actually get the final solutions in place, whether self-funded or through grant systems.
Sounds good. But just from my perspective, again, I didn't build a house, but I'm definitely flexible. If we could come up with solutions that help everyone, I don't want that house to be a problem, clearly.
Yeah, no problem. I think we might have to reduce that berm a little bit as well. I think when we were out there on the field visit, and how is that correct?
We can take a look at it. It may not be necessary, Robert. We can definitely take a look at it. That swell looked pretty good on the 9th Avenue side. So, I think it's properly graded.
Okay.
Hey, Hal, I've been out there doing the storm events. There was some issue along the edge of the existing road, going up and down and not having that natural release from the dirt road into the swale as we are proposing on the proposed typicals. So there will be some, optimizing of the, as we pitch the road to one side and we let water go straight into this conveyor system that is as well as checking for all connectivities in the side streets that as long we maintain the pre-developed drainage patterns.
Correct. So like on that swale along 9th, along the gentleman that just spoke, we may have to regrade the front slope some, because based upon the changing profile of the road, but I believe that probably a large portion of that swale is okay, but we'll look at it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. More questions. Again, I'm going to be out there, so please feel free to jump out there and, let me know what additional concerns are that you have in front of your house. I'll probably start again on 9th and Main, and then walk the entire project, and then be out there with Travis. And if Scott's going to be in tomorrow, maybe Scott can join us, and then we can relay whatever information we have to Hal. But with the irrigation, I'll talk to council individually and then present that formally to town council on Tuesday night. Sorry, Bill, I can't just spend money that,
No. Just the way you phrased it, I don't have very much hope for it. But the main thing I'm concerned about is that pipe that runs down to the lake. If I lose the prime and it's got to be replaced, there's some way you can mitigate that swale so it doesn't go deep enough to where my pipe is. It seems like you could accommodate that. And as far as Brandy's well goes, it's barely into the town's right of way. I'm sure you could accommodate that swale to somehow swing where she doesn't have to replace an entire well. It seems like you could mitigate some of these issues that go ahead.
Agreed, Bill. And that we've been reasonable. We always are. And that's why we do these field visits. And that's why we make sure we have these conversations with people, and what we can do, within reason, we're going to make sure that we do. I just can't go outside of my purview and just say, yes, we're going to go ahead and pay for this, pay for that. All I can say is we'll work with you as much as possible within the guidelines that I can do. And then anything else, I'm going to have to go to town council, but we'll make sure we accommodate what we can do on my side.
As far as her well and my pipe goes, I'm not asking you to pay for anything. I'm just asking you to avoid them.
We'll
As far
try.
as the sprinkler system goes, I can repair a sprinkler system. That's not a huge concept. I just kind of threw it out there. But when you're talking wells and in an irrigation line, that's a whole different ballgame.
No, I'm still going to take some of your avocados.
Yeah. All right. That's an easy swap, but yeah.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Again, you have my email. I will be posting this on YouTube, so make sure that your friends or neighbors that weren't able to attend can be able to see this. Hopefully this is productive in giving you an overall concept design. And then when we get into the actual nuts and bolts of the actual design, again, that 14 feet is the max, except for when we get onto east, but that's on the town's property. But we'll try to work with each individual property owner on any of the issues that you have. We have that track record in the past, and we're gonna make sure that we have that track record in the future as well. And hopefully you do appreciate what we do. Making sure that we try to work with you. Again, this is the type of service that you typically don't get in other jurisdictions, is direct contact with not only the town manager, public works director, but also the staff and engineering staff, because we want to make sure that we do meet that happy medium. And then, with both resolving the issue and, not disturbing your lives in a way that's going to make it too intrusive. So again, thank you all for, spending time with us on a Wednesday night. And we hope to see you next Tuesday. And then I'll be out there tomorrow, and I'll probably shoot out there Friday as well, probably later in the day for a little bit in case I missed anybody, but always send a text or send an email. And with that said, I'll go ahead and stop the recording.